I had taken some work with me to the Orchard Project in upstate New York, a place called Hunter. And I had an idea that I was going to write about two characters who'd come to a point in their life where they were so uncertain about their ability to carry on with life that they couldn't. They were making a decision not to. And I felt that I could probably write the female character, but that the male character was coming from such a different place, such a different kind of uncertainty. So I talked it over with the people who run this project, and they set me up like a miracle. They set me up this mixing desk and a mic, and everyone who was working out there with me, other theatre artists and professionals, some of whom have been in the business a very long time. I think the oldest character I've got is 68 there. In fact, oldest person that I spoke to. And they came and sat and let me interview them on the subject of uncertainty, and so that I could capture the sound of it. I had the feeling that this is a long-term project that I've been working on almost, I think, in every piece that I work on, which is that the person is somehow captured in the rhythm of the way they speak, that, right down to how the breath moves in and out of the body and how speech and emotion is punctuated in that way. And that's the kind of thing that I was trying to capture. It turned out to be quite kind of serendipitous, because I had taken two other pieces of work over there, with me to develop. And I had arrived there feeling very uncertain. I didn't exactly know how I was going to get there. Someone was going to come and pick me up from JFK. I arrived there. It was a heat wave. I'm not very good. Look, I'm pink already, I just burn. And someone came to meet me to drive me a 3.5-hour drive up to, out of New York City in itself, out of JFK and on up the Hudson, basically. And it was a 3.5-hour drive. And he actually was a brilliant driver. I mean, because he could drive with his knees and drink coffee and chat with his girlfriend and play with the iPod connection all at the same time, which terrified the life out of me, but obviously which he'd only have been able to do had he been a very good driver. So I arrived there, it was very late at night. I was hot, I was tired, I was obviously feeling very uncertain. And I should probably tell you, there's another bit of the serendipity, is that I had printed out, just before I'd come, and my daughter had sent me a David Foster Wallace essay that I had been interested in reading, and almost the last thing I did before I left the house was print it out and shove it in my bag to read on the plane. So I had that sitting on the desk when people, came to be interviewed, and I used the first paragraph as a sound check for them all. And I'm not going to spoil the essay for those of you who'd like to go and read it, but it turned out to be apropos. And yes, what actually happened was, I'm not sure that I realized that I was exploring my own uncertainty. But when people sat down and started speaking to me about uncertainty, I realized that I was having some of the most important conversations with people that I'd had. So I threw the project out and just spent the rest of the week interviewing people who were very open. I think a play about an interviewer and people is a different play, and makes some kind of role for the interviewer, whereas in actual fact, probably for about the first day and a half, maybe even 2 days, I was probably a very poor interviewer, and I asked far too many questions, and I listen back to them now and I can hear myself interrupting people instead of letting them finish. And it took me that amount of time to realise that actually just me being there and listening was the most important thing. I mean, and letting them talk and maybe encouraging them to say more about things. So in that way, my role in it was simply to enable them to speak. And so that's why the questions don't appear and the interviewer doesn't appear. Had I been there longer, I would have kept doing more because no one had the same stories about uncertainty to tell. I think everyone has their own distinct, their unique stories about uncertainty. Well, that was, I think, part of the reason that they agreed to speak to me was because I said I wouldn't. So. In some ways, the process is, I thought it was very different in the beginning. And then when it actually came to making the piece of work, I discovered it was the same process all over again. It was start off with hundreds of pages or equivalents, thoughts, ideas, and then narrow it down to, I think I got it down to just over 100 pages of things that would be relevant for This Is Water. And then I narrowed it down again to 81. And then third draft, I got it down to, I think, 38, which we've just hacked away at. And that is kind of typical of my process.
Do you think you'll pursue it in a longer form, or have you?
I have already done that. The reason I was so excitable when I turned up today was I've put together a whole other set of interviews, fewer actually, but longer pieces for a Payne's Plough show called The Uncertainty Files. And yeah, and even though I had just finished doing this like last week, it was hard all over again because I had to go back to the initial files, and I haven't actually finished transcribing them. I don't know if you've ever transcribed anything.
I have.
And I think you've seen what it looks like on the page. It's a very different thing, separating out every stutter, every in-breath, every background sound. Oh, it was painstaking, and I'm not quite finished doing that yet. I mean, I've got over 500 pages as it is. Oh, aren't they brilliant?
Absolutely gorgeous.
I mean, I can't believe, that was just them reading it this morning. And I do think if you write people's rhythms, though, it's less of a barrier.
Yes.
You can say LA in California and lots of the other glom and all of those other words, but when they're encased in a rhythm like that, they don't feel foreign, I don't think. No, because rehearsals is the chance that you get to, test the thing to say, well, that's not working, or it's a kind of public way, before it goes into the big public, but it's a kind of public way to go to see if it's working.